Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast. So, today we're going to be talking about consent, and it's a very important subject. That's why I feel very passionate about it. So, let's talk. So, according to Wikipedia, consent is described as the following: consent occurs when one person voluntarily agrees to the proposal or desires of another. It is a term of common speech with specific definitions as used in such fields as law, medicine, research, and sexual relationships. Consent, as understood in specific context, may differ from every meaning. When I talk about consent, I like to talk about fries. And I know what you're thinking, where is this going? So, for each letter of the word fries, it has its own meaning behind it. So, for F, it is freely given. For the R, it's reversible. For the I, it's informed. For the E, it's enthusiastic. And for the S, it's specific. And I think lots of people struggle with what means yes and what means no. And I think a lot more people struggle with the idea and the concept of being able to say no, being able to say, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't feel comfortable, you're making me uncomfortable, and I think that's a hard subject to talk about. People really, they tend to take advantage of us, and it's honestly difficult because when you're in a situation and you sometimes feel that you cannot say no, you have to say yes, or you feel obligated to say yes, then sometimes you do say yes. And later on, that can lead to regret. And studies have shown that even if you regret things like that, it forms part of your personality. So, let's say something has happened in the past, and it has just made you the person that you are today. And personally, I think it's a very grateful thing to be able to reflect on what has happened and to see how far you've come and who you have become. But also, in the same breath, I would like to say that it's okay to say no, and it's sometimes better to say no. I mean, if I would have said no to certain situations in my life, I wouldn't have gone through pain or through emotional scarring or things like that, and it sucks. I'm not gonna lie, it does suck. But at the end of the day, most people who are survivors of sexual assault and things like that, they're grateful for the person that experience had made them. And I think that's a very important message to take away, because nobody's circumstances are perfect. And if something wrong happens, it's okay to feel bad about it. You should work through your emotions, and you should be okay. You should not be okay for other people. You should work on yourself and feel okay with yourself, because I think that's where most of the struggle comes in. We think we have to be okay for the people around us. I mean, sometimes I feel I have to be strong so that my friends don't think either I'm weak or that they can't come to me with their problems. And it's a hard topic. I mean, I I would like to personally open up a bit more about this, start talking more about my emotions, how I feel, and things like that. There are different types of consent, and I know in South Africa you have to be 16 to give sexual consent, and if you're not 16, it can be classified as abuse, sexual abuse, or things like that, even rape to a full extent. I think that we all have this idea of what consent is and what consent means, and I think it's very misleading sometimes. Consent doesn't always just happen in situations like sexual situations or things like that. Consent is about your body. It is your body, no one else's. And it is knowing that it's yours and feeling comfortable to say no, and if you want to, you can say yes. Consent is a lot more than just physical things like sex or being touched in a certain way, but I feel like even if you don't want to be touched, or even just in general don't like people touching you, it's okay to say no. It's also a form of consent. If you like engage in like hugs and things like that, but that doesn't mean yes, it's a go ahead. I think a lot of people take indicators and things like that, like they see things in a very weird way. Like if someone makes out with them or that type of situation, then it immediately says in their brain, yes, it's fine, everything's fine. But I think we all have to stop a second and wait and make sure that it is okay. Because there have been like many situations and incidents where a person thought it was okay and the other person was uncomfortable, and even it could have easily like gone to court as a case of abuse or sexual abuse. And I think that's a very important thing to remember, just to check with the person. Always communication is key. You have to understand that every person is different. Everybody sees everything differently. And just because something is okay with you, or it has been okay with you for a long time in the past, or things like that, I mean, it doesn't mean it's okay with the next person. Basically, I just think consent is your own. Consent is, I know that I'm talking about consent like I know everything, but consent is absolutely indefinitely yours. It doesn't belong to anyone else. It's your body. It's something you feel comfortable with. And if you deem a situation or something as uncomfortable, then it is uncomfortable. Your body is telling you it's uncomfortable. So, what does the brain do? It either fights, it flees, or it freezes. And in many instances, when it comes to sexual abuse, then most people tend to freeze, and they don't, well, they are present, but they don't understand what's happening until afterwards. And I think it's very important to keep our eyes open, knowing what is consent and what can be deemed as consent, and what is not okay to be doing, what is not okay to say, not okay to touch people in a certain way, or even just touch people if they don't want to be touched. Most people, and sadly enough, are sometimes in situations where the consent isn't even an option. Lots of people that has like had sexual assaults at work or even at schools and things like that, they didn't ask for it. And lots of people, and I know that it has been a very controversial things where rapists and things and people like that say that the way that someone dresses tells them how much they want it, or things like that, and I think that's utter bullshit. I think we dress how we want. We dress to feel comfortable, confident, and just to feel like ourselves. And being judged by just how you dress or the way that you act, that is horrible. I mean, I wouldn't make assumptions of someone based on how they dress, or just by having conversation with them. To be able to work up to a point where consent is necessary, you have to have an emotional connection, and you have to like work on it. You have to constantly put in effort to figure out what is okay and what is someone's boundaries, what is crossing a line, and that is very important. There is a line. There really, really is a line. And a lot of people cross the line without even noticing it. I'm not doing this podcast just to inform you about what is consent or other topics that I talk about. I'm doing this podcast to kind of try and open your eyes, try and raise a voice of consent isn't what everyone thinks it is. People who have been in situations that weren't consensual, they can tell you it is not the same, and that kind of makes me mad because we live in a society where we have to tell people not to touch us, or we don't feel comfortable with this. And I think it's the other person's job to know what your boundaries is and how far is okay, and without crossing a line by that. And yeah, I'm just gonna end off with 2 quotes, and then yeah. So the first one isn't really a quote, but it is just like a continuation of the consent speech or whatever. And it says, no means no. Stop means no. Turning away means no. I don't want to means no. Shoving you away means no. Leave me alone means no. Passed out means no. I'm not ready means no. Pushing you away means no. I don't feel like it means no. Drunk or drugged means no. Get away from me means no. Screaming means no. Don't means no. Crying means no. And the next one is also something that is, it's more of a quote, but it has very rough edges and flaws, and that's what I actually love about it. And it says, it's not consent if you make me afraid to say no. And that's so true. And I really want that one to sink in, because when I read it the first time, I was like, damn, that hits hard. And yeah, thank you for listening. This was another episode of Let's Talk with me, Sean Sutherland. And yeah, you should have an amazing day. I believe in you. You should believe in you. And I hope that the message that you take away from today is no means no. Thank you very much. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of my podcast. So today we're going to be talking about consent. And